All right. Hello. We will be presenting our feasibility study for switching UTD to 100% renewable energy. Can you switch a slide? The purpose of the study is to determine whether it is feasibly possible for UTD to switch its power utilization to a 100% renewable energy source. Those renewable energy sources are either solar power, wind power, hydroelectricity, or geothermal electricity. But because of Richardson's location within Dallas, we're not going to be looking at hydro or geothermal at all, just because it's not feasibly possible. So we'll only be looking at wind and solar. To do that, we'll be calculating the requirements to run UTD's power grid, and we'll also be determining the benefits and drawbacks to run UTD off of a 100% renewable energy source, whether that be any legal consequences, any economic benefits towards tax reduction, or anything like that. Switch the slide.
Okay, so for the technical feasibility, I'm just trying to prove here that UTD can move towards a 100% renewable energy source to power its entire grid. So first, right now, UTD currently runs on a natural gas central energy plant, and it also has a backup on the city grid. So the campus already runs on a centralized system, which already means instead of starting from scratch for making renewable energy, we already have an existing source where we could just have to switch it from its central energy plant to renewable energy sources. Second, Richardson, the location itself, has a very good spot for solar energy, as on average there are 230 solar sunny days a year, which means that rooftops of buildings and also parking lot canopies can help power the entire grid for the school. And the main question is, how much solar energy do we actually need in order to power the entire school? And to figure this out, we took the 2024 data, which found out that UTD used 131.6 gigawatts of energy, and that translates to roughly 87 to 98 megawatts of required solar energy capacity. So the system would still need a type of battery storage in order to store solar power for the entire grid for days such as rainy days when the school wasn't able to get solar energy from the sun. And the graph just shows what an average load and a peak load looks like for solar energy compared to the solar capacity it would need in order to power the entire of UTD. And how we found this number was we took the amount of power being used at UTD in a year, which was 131 million kilowatts, and then we divided that by the amount of solar energy in the amount of energy 1 kilowatt of solar energy makes in a year, which is 1,508, and we divided that to find how many the number we used at the start to figure out how much solar energy we would need to power UTD.
When we look at the economic side of implementing solar power at UTD, the first thing that kind of stands out is the upfront cost. And for a project around this many megawatts, that's roughly between 90 and $135 million, which is a big investment, but solar energy is really a long-term project. And so after installation, the costs for maintenance are pretty low, and there's no like fuel expense that's ongoing. So the panels last around 25 years or more. And over that period of time, UTD could cut energy spending by up to 40%, which frees up millions that could go towards research or student programs instead of utility bills. And another positive is that UTD wouldn't be paying all of this out of its pocket. So federal incentives like the investment tax credit and other state grants are designed to make renewable transitions more affordable. And schools and government facilities are prioritized for these programs because in a way, they lead by example. Beyond cost savings, there's also an innovation factor that plays into it, and UTD's position itself as a sustainability leader kind of strengthens its brand and helps attract students that are environmentally conscious and partners. So economically, it's not just feasible, but also a smart investment in the long term.
For our operational feasibility, what we're going to be looking at here is whether or not we can actually place these solar panels on the campus itself, because a wind farm would just be too big for UTD to deal with, especially inside the Richardson area. So using our data, we have our metric that the land mass of UTD covers around 500 acres. It's a little more than that, but we couldn't get exact numbers. But for that, we're just going to be using Austin metrics for the solar farm they do have installed, which gets 34.3 megawatts per DC power on 437.6 acres. And we're going to use this also to see how well the system could deal with a flexible demand. Can we go to the next slide? So we have a lot of calculations get done here, but basically we're going to be taking that acres of 437.6 acres and dividing it by that 34.3 megawatts per DC to get a 12.76 acres per megawatt DC. Due to not having the Richardson exact statistics for solar capacity, we have to use the Texas average of 25%. Plugging that in, we take 1 megawatt and divide that by how many hours are in a year, or multiply that by how many hours are in a year, and then we times that by the 0.25 to get 2,190 megawatt hours per year. And then we take the energy per acre, which is 2,190, divide that by the 12.6 or 12.76 acres per megawatt DC to get our 0.172 gigawatt hours per acres per year. And then finally, we just divide that by our actual energy usage in 2024, which is 131.6 gigawatt hours per year, and divide that by the 0.172 and get 765.1 acres of land needed to just cover and generate enough energy for the 2024 usage of power on UTD. And that is not taking into the flexible demand. Can we go to the next slide for that? Flexible demand, to calculate that, it's pretty simple. All we do is divide the 131.6 gigawatt hours by how many hours in a year, which is 8,760, to get 15 megawatt hours per year or per hour. Due to not having an official energy usage statistics for every hour at UTD in the day for averages, we're just going to have to use a loose calculation that of 12 hours of sun, 12 hours of dusk. And so you're going to have to multiply that by the usage per hour that we just calculated. And that comes out to about two times multiplier by adding the days and dusks and then dividing it by the days. So we'll need around 30 megawatt hour per hour to power UTD through flexible demand, which would nearly double how many solar panels that we would actually need installed on the campus. And if you can go to the next slide. Because of that, we're going to say that it's not operationally feasible. Taking into the account the area surrounding UTD, we can't just expand or put it somewhere else onto a big solar farm like many other places do. UTD only has around 500 acres of land to utilize, so this would cover every single square foot that we have on UTD just to power how much they use in 1 year. That's partially why most institutions only cover a small portion of their energy using renewable energy sources, is because they simply cannot generate it for 100%. The flexible demand would increase the acres and it just becomes too much to deal with.
Okay, so for the environmental feasibility, we already know that UTD has shown a very strong commitment to sustainability. For example, the university has an ASHI Stars Gold certification and outlined Goal 5 in its strategic plan, which focuses on creating a more sustainable campus. This shows that environmentally, the university is already aligned with renewable energy goals, which makes this transition not only feasible, but consistent with UTD's long-term direction. And if we can go to the next slide. Okay, so replacing the central energy plant's natural gas system with renewable sources like solar and wind would directly reduce emissions of carbon dioxide and nitrogen oxides. According to data from the EPA's AVERT tool, shifting energy production at the structural level leads to a much greater environmental benefit than small-scale individual behavioral changes. So on average, every kilowatt hour of energy shifted from fossil fuels avoids about 0.8 pounds of CO2 equivalent, which adds up very quickly for a campus as large as ours. And just beyond cutting emissions, this project also helps UTD maintain its leadership in environmental stewardship. It would improve our air quality around campus, reduce our dependency on non-renewable natural gas, and support a cleaner energy grid for North Texas overall.
Legally, UTD is in a pretty strong position to move forward with a renewable energy project like this, because both Texas and the federal government have built-in support for universities that want to adopt this clean energy project moving forward. And the investment tax credit is one of the biggest incentives. It basically reimburses a portion of the project's cost through tax credits. And this makes the financial side a lot easier to handle. But beyond money, the regulatory path is clear, which is a big portion of it. And Texas has an open energy market. So institutions and colleges like UTD can generate their own power, and they are also allowed to work directly with solar providers. Most of the requirements, which involve safety permits, compliance, and environmental clearances, are very achievable and pretty standard procedure under the current laws. Additionally, UTD also already has a strong sustainability framework in place. The 2020 sustainability report shows that it's compliant with environmental and building standards. So expanding into this solar field, which is built on those efforts and would be completely new. So from UTD's legal perspective, this is just the next logical step, and the laws, incentives, and the structures are already in place, which means that it's more about execution than risk in the future.
All right, moving to our last subject, which is the transition risks that come with switching over to 100% renewable energy. These are risks that are generated from the liability in the time period of the installation. One of the major factors we have as a transition risk is the training factor, whether or not we can deal with the economic requirement of retraining all of our faculty to learning how the new system works and how to easily maintain it. But as you heard earlier, it is pretty easy to maintain these. It's just a completely different skill set from what you had before. And if we had the room to move it off to an outdoor energy base, it would just be done by a different company entirely. But it is something that you got to take into factor when switching over to 100% renewable energy. Another factor is the innovation factor. This could be a risk because obviously solar panels keep getting better every single year. And if the technology becomes obsolete before it has a time to pay itself off, and you just might not even get the economic benefit of dealing with them. But as you heard, they generally last around 20 years. So if you only just wanted to buy one and didn't want to deal with any innovation, it's not that bad to go down that route. Another thing that could affect it is very a timely issue is supply line factors. Solar panels generally actually have a lot of issues with supply lines that may affect installation timelines, which can seriously impact the economic burden that you go on when switching over to the 100% renewable energy. But this is also only calculable during time of installation. Next slide, please. So yeah, in conclusion, we would say that this is technically almost feasible from a energy generation standpoint, but operationally it is unfeasible largely due to UTD's placement inside of the Richardson area. There doesn't really have enough room for a large solar farm that could support it in a nearby place. And also we just can't deal with putting it on the actual university itself since it's not enough acres. So I would say those both make this technically unfeasible. The legal, economic, and environmental positives just don't outweigh the technical capability to supply enough, the lack of technical capability to supply enough power. Legally, it's all fine. Economically, it does have its benefits, and with all the tax cuts and power saving. And environmentally, it is great on pretty much every scale, switching over to non-renewable energy. Luckily, these are the two things that are rapidly advancing. And easily in a couple of years, you could see that one day we have different technology that can make up for the operational feasibility falling through and allow us to install this on UTD campuses. And even then, we could also do a smaller percentage. Only a 40% renewable energy source could easily be done on top of UTD's energy system. Next slide. So we had Omesh, who researched the technical feasibility. Tanya researched the environmental feasibility, and Runav researched the economic and legal feasibility, and then Liam researched the operational feasibility and transition risks. And here are our references, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.